Hey there. Welcome to Owning the Goal, a podcast that helps you take charge of your sales success. I'm its creator and your host, Brian McFarland. I look forward to sharing insights and inspiration from my 40-plus year sales career as a seller and a sales leader. And like you, I'm more than just a salesperson, which is why this isn't just a podcast about sales. I'll talk about my other passions too, like books, sports, music, and mental health and fitness, and how they all relate to hitting our goals. Because success in sales is success in life. And as we sit here today on a beautiful Saturday in New York City, I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by podcasting and overall legend, the famous Rory Paquette, and he'll be way more famous after this show because we've got dozens of listeners. Dozens, I tell you. And Rory recently celebrated his 55th birthday. Happy belated, but I told you that on your birthday. And what Rory's going to share today is the show is about owning the goal. So as life goes on, our goals change, and we have to implement different strategies to reach those goals. So we're going to crawl into Rory's world and have him share some of those insights to benefit all of us and our listeners. So welcome to the show, Rory, and thanks for being here.
Thank you, Brian. It means a lot. I like what you've done so far with your show, and I'm just happy to be here right now.
Our pleasure. And I see you're drinking your favorite coffee. Feel free to give it a shout out.
100%. Freedom Hill Coffee, baby. Freedom Hill Coffee. Absolutely.
If I drank coffee, I would ask you for some, but I'm drinking my Celsius energy drink and water because you make me want to drink less energy drink. So anyway, but you're all fueled up. So help our listeners with the tips and life successes that you've achieved so much in your life.
Well, I appreciate that. It's been great getting to know you and, a lot of other podcasters here, too, in the last several years. I've been podcasting now for about 5 years, a little bit more. And I have one podcast that's been my flagship podcast through this entire thing, which is called Power of Man. And then recently, in the last year, we've started another one that is just a huge takeoff hit. It's called The Podcaster Nation, and that's where you and I met, was when I was interviewing you for that. And so that's been a real blessing in my life. You and I were discussing in the pre-interview, kind of what angle you want to take on owning the goal and so on. I think at my stage in life, because, I'm so old now, at 55. One of the things that hit me when we were talking about it was how your goals change. And, when I was, a younger man and starting out and, what goals look like then, throughout raising my children, when kids get older, once you become an empty nester, your goals change. And I think one of the things that happens to us, especially in the sales world, we are so goal oriented that we feel like they can't ever change. Once we set them, if we move them, then we're cheating. If we change the end goal, then it's almost like it's an excuse to not hit it. And the fact of the matter is sometimes life changes. And sometimes your needs and your wants and your desires and your dreams, those change. And when that happens, your goals need to change. And so part of my message, I guess, today is it is okay to change your goal, to alter things, to say, that's not what I want anymore. And, take a different track.
I love that. And I know a bit about your story because we had you had the opportunity to both be interviewed by you and interview with you, but sort of accelerating, let's say, through your 20s, if you will. Maybe we can go by decades, if you like, because you have so many underneath you.
I have so many
An
decades.
extended show. You know, throw out like walk us back into your 20s. Like, what were the sort of goals you set for yourself, and then how did you implement strategies to achieve them?
Yeah, great. In my early 20s, it was all about, survival. It was getting out of a bad situation at home. It was trying to set myself up. I was taking care of, siblings still and, that kind of thing. Just finishing college, mother dying of cancer, the whole nine yards. I had obligations at a very young age. So it was get the job that was going to pay enough to keep the lights on for everybody, to take care of, my family, that wasn't even really, it wasn't my family, like my kids and stuff. It was, my sisters, my brother, things like that. So it was important for survival. So you go out, you get the best job you can, you make the most money you can. But, back then the goal was security. It was survival and security. And so it's, a regular paycheck you can count on because you're taking care of more people than yourself. It's, some benefits, were important back then. That was long before all this healthcare thing changed 700 times, Things were pretty conventional back when I was a kid. So steady, safe, secure, that was the goal of the day. So I, worked hard, worked multiple jobs, and the thing you do is try and get into management, right? Because management pays more, better hours, so on and so forth, a little more job security. And so that's kind of what I did back then. I was a bartender for a while. I managed a string of video stores, back then when I was younger. But it was management, it was growth, and it was trying to sort of find a career path, after you get done studying for a living and you have real world concerns. So in your 20s, early 20s, it was that. Later 20s, I had, when I was 23, my daughter was born. And all of a sudden I became a father. And then I had my family I had to worry about. So I was still sort of taking care of, mom and brother and sister, but also now was taking care of my own kid. And so you start to, security is still a big deal, but you very quickly realize that there's just not enough money to do everything that you want to do on a manager's salary. So I started looking into sales. And I said, look, I know how hard I'm willing to work. So where can I make more money, bigger commissions? Where can I actually get paid for my effort and not just my time? And so, I'm in my mid-20s, and I'm learning how to not trade, hours for dollars, back then. And that got me into my first commission sales opportunity, which was real estate, like a lot of your guests so far. But, I was very good at it. And my family had been in it. I was kind of natural into it. Had some help from my dying mother because she was an excellent realtor as well. And so I had kind of a mentor in that way. And then I also had a mentor through Coldwell Banker, my first brokerage that I worked with. And guy's name was Al. He was great. And he kind of took me under his wing and taught me the business, end of it. And so I got into commission sales from then. And frankly, I never really left the idea of being paid what I'm worth and not trading time for money, but, going on trying to make as much money as you can in the time that you have. And so, the goals changed from being safe and secure to making as much as possible because you have to grow. You have to, save for a house. You have to pay for a kid's college fund. You've got to, get life insurance. I mean, all of these things. You got to put food on the table for someone who's depending on you, So right then, just in my 20s, goals changed from Bing to Bing. And it was right off the bat, I had to learn how to kind of, adapt and overcome.
Talk about a rapid change. going at 23, walking along and doing your, trying to take care of one family, and then all of a sudden now you're dad. Like, wow. So talk about goals changing. Pivoting a second, your real estate gentleman, Al, your mentor. What were some of the, our listeners love to, when I get feedback, they love to pick up tips, we're all salespeople, right?
Oh, yeah.
They love to pick up tips of like what makes some of the, the great salespeople great? Like what was your unique selling proposition, forgetting about the real estate, but what did Rory bring to the game that was different than everybody else?
No, I like that. I appreciate you asking that. It's a great question. I did real estate back in the day before computers. So, I mean, people have to kind of wrap their head around that first. And so when I started, our entire multiple listing service, the MLS system, was in a big book that was like, 4 to 6 inches wide. And it came out every quarter. You literally looked through a book to find out what was on the market and carried it with you all the time in your car. It was the Stone Ages of real estate. And so we didn't have all the computer stuff. About a year and a half into me doing real estate, the MLS first became computerized, and you could actually go on a computer and look something up. So all we really had was ourselves, our own, like you like to say, grit, And one thing that Hal did with me that I've learned to do with every other salesperson I've ever worked with was he evaluated my strengths. He trained me the way I needed to be trained. He didn't take some cookie cutter program and go, okay, this is what we do, and this is how many calls you make, and this is how you behave. He said, what can I do with this kid? He's hungry. He's borderline desperate. He's got to make money. He's willing to work, 100 hours a week if he has to. He's got a heart attack mentality. What can I really do with this kid? And so he taught me that way. And, we would go door to door, knocking on doors going, hey, I'm, new to the area. I'm, in real estate. Wondered if you ever thought about selling your house. And people would be like, no. Okay, well, I'll tell you what, if you ever do, here's my card. Please, let me know. And that was a really hard way of doing it. We'd pick up the yellow pages on another day because we used to have a book that was this big, everybody's phone number in it. And we'd pick up the white pages, rather, out of that, which had all the residential phone numbers in it. You remember. And we would just start calling people. I'd start at A one day and just keep working. And then the next day I would do phone sales. I would start at Z and work my way back in that way. And eventually I'd get to the middle and call the entire phone book. But I'd just simply call people and go, hey, considering selling your house. You're looking for a new one. And I found prospects that way. People actually said, yeah, actually, I am thinking about that. Great, let's talk. Now, that's certainly nothing we would do today. Today, people look at that and they would just laugh. And they'd be like, oh, why would you ever do that? That's crazy. Because back then, that's what we had. That's what we could do. Another thing that we did, which was really big, and in terms of like my calling card, one of the things that I brought to the table was just a sense of aggressive assertiveness that really nobody else in our business had. And it wasn't like towards people. It was about my work ethic. We had something called phone duty back then, where you sat in a little room with the big MLS book and all the flyers for your company's listings and everything, and you waited for the phone to ring. And if anybody wanted to get questions, or wanted to get questions answered about a house that they drove by or they saw somewhere, they'd call into the company, and we would answer the phone. And my job was to give the information, try and turn them into a client, and so on and so forth. And one thing Hal and I came up with was I was either getting a name and a number from the person who called, or I was getting hung up on, one way or the other. And I never, ever hung up the phone, ever, until I got that name and number and got an appointment. So literally it was a name, number, and appointment, or get hung up on. And I got hung up on a lot, But one thing that we had back then, man, was we really handled rejection. That I think today's salespeople, I don't know that any of them could handle it. I'll be honest with you, because I've seen some of today's salespeople. They make 4 phone calls, they get turned down 4 times. They're considering a new line of work. For us, we'd make 100 phone calls. 99 people would tell you exactly what they thought of you and curse you out up one side, down the other, and leave you crying in the street. And you kept on going until that one person said, yeah, I'm interested. And that's how sales was. It was just dog eat dog, dog fight, grind. And that was one thing that I had was nobody was going to outwork me ever, no matter what. And so that was big. That was big from hell, to answer your question in a very long way. I apologize.
No, please. You're talking to the king of long-windedness, but you are far from that. So there's so many things, there's so many nuggets in there. Yes, today's you and I in our pre-interview we talked about how we look at the word no, right? Mm-hmm. And we both have a similar mindset of it, where people in my office go, "Oh my God, they told me no," and I've trained and developed salespeople as well, and I'm like, "Fantastic!" Like, what do you mean? I'm like, on average, it takes someone to say no 6 to 7 times before they say yes. So you just got one closer to yes, and they're like, they can't even grasp the concept of what that is.
Right.
So you're getting hung up on, today's version of getting hung up on is being ghosted, right? Mm. So it's just meaning you have no engagement. So what would you say, and why were you being hung up on? Like, what were you doing that was getting people to hang up on you?
I was never quitting with the questioning. There was no way for them to end the conversation politely, Okay, well, thanks a lot. So listen, were you looking for 3 bedrooms or 2 bedrooms? Well, we're looking for 3, but it's okay. That's not what I'm looking for. Thanks anyway. No, listen, hey, I can take care of this for you. I have a lot of other houses. Tell me a little bit more what you're looking for. I don't know any other houses right now. That was just the one. I just wanted to get the information. Thanks a lot. He's trying to get off the phone. And I'm like, well, I'll tell you what, you called, so obviously you're looking. How soon are you guys looking to move? And he'd try it again. I'd go, so where are you living now? And he'd do it again. Okay, so are you renting or are you buying? I would never stop asking a question. And I didn't even care if it was a yes, no, not open-ended question, because as salespeople, we're always taught no, yes, no's, right? I didn't even care if it was yes, no, because I just wasn't going to stop. There was no way he was getting off that phone with me. And either he caved and realized, you know what, I do need a house. This guy's really working it. Okay, yeah. And he'd start talking to me. Or he would be like, I just can't get off the phone with this guy. Goodbye. Bang.
Right.
And he'd hang up.
Right. Right.
So I'm like, look, either I'm getting a name, number, and appointment, or I'm getting hung up on.
Love that. And kudos to Hal, because I've always tried to find this in the best managers I've ever worked for. There's a great book called Strength Finder. Mm-hmm. And the crux of the book is too many managers try and build up your weaknesses while kind of forgetting about your strengths. And it's like proven by data. I'm very strong in some things, you're very strong in some things, you're weaker in other areas. Don't bother to try and build somebody's weaknesses up, because the net gain is going to be very small. Mm-hmm. Focus on someone's strengths. That's what a great leader does. And now I'm guessing, because then now move us into your 30s, if you will, because I know then you went from being an individual seller to actually building a real estate company. So
I did.
What was that transition? So you go from individual seller, you're probably doing well financially. I'm guessing you're supporting your family or families, mm-hmm. and then you make a decision and say, okay, I'm changing my goal now. What happened there?
Yeah, you reach a point where your life is dictating to you what you need, and you go from. I had my daughter, of course, and my wife and I at the time, we got divorced. So I'm every other weekend, 2 days during the week type of dad, right? I end up leaving real estate for a short amount of time and working in advertising, because, you're going back to, you've got other things you're trying to build. You're looking for a little more security, that type of thing. I learned a lot in those fields, and that was great. But and it solves some of the problems, because, when you're divorced and you have, child support and all these things you have to take care of paying, and you have to have a set schedule because you can't miss your visitation with your daughter. So all of a sudden the goal is no longer how much can I make? The goal now becomes, okay, I don't have some of these responsibilities I used to have. My mother's passed away. My brother is standing on his own. My sister's off in college. Everybody's doing a little bit better. Now I just have to worry about my daughter. I mean, like, that's it. And I need to be consistent. So I go into advertising. I start doing very well there. But it's not the real estate money, but it's consistency and it's safety and it's how do I build myself up there. So again, the goal changes to where I'm looking for that safety. I'm getting a commission on top of my salary, so I still am looking for more. But I'm building a whole new business and I'm learning a whole new way of selling. I'm no longer selling houses. I'm selling advertising for someone else's product. You learn a different way of going at a client, going at a buyer, and the field was exciting, and back then advertising was exciting. It wasn't anywhere near as watered down as it is, now. And print advertising was huge, and Yellow Pages advertising was huge. Billboards were huge. TV was so far out of reach cost-wise that, people really couldn't afford it unless they were Pepsi, or Coke. And so there was a lot. There was a lot to do there. And so that became my priority for a while, until I met my wife, who's my current wife and has been my wife for almost 30 years. And, we have 2 wonderful kids together. But when I met her and we started planning a life together, then it was back to, hey, yes, I still have the things I have to take care of with my daughter. And she's now part of our new family also. But we want to build a family. And we can't do that on this advertising salary. This isn't going to work. So it's back to what's the best way for me to make, a lot of money, work really hard right now, before I have more children, and so on. And so I had the opportunity to go back into real estate. I did, picked right up where I left off, didn't miss a beat. And I got into real estate that time with the intention of becoming a manager, finding a way to own my own brokerage, bring agents in underneath me, do things a very different way. And so that became the goal. I came back as the same old realtor, and everybody was like, oh, hey, Rory's back. And then they quickly realized that I was not the old Rory. I had new goals. I was a new guy. I had new dreams I was pursuing, and I was there to conquer everything. I mean, I didn't just want my piece of pie. I wanted everybody else's. And I wasn't going home without it. And so things changed, goals changed, but that was the 30s right there. Was me just in attack mode, all the time, going after everything I could get. If for some reason somebody else got a buyer instead of me, I went to work on myself. How did this happen? I had to be better. I can't do this again. And I went on a string of 7 years where I didn't go on a listing appointment and not get the listing. 7 years. Because I researched before I went there. I knocked everybody else out. I knew how to beat all the competition without saying anything bad about the competition, just beating them. And it was a very, very successful run. I got to be very well known, and it set me up to move into owning my own brokerage in my 40s.
Wow. And then that comes with another whole set of headaches, right? Because now you're not in charge of you're not just in charge of yourself, right?
Yeah.
And I think you and I are cut from a similar cloth where when I was always an individual contributor, and when I went in and rose up to run my own sales group, and I had 20 sales reps underneath me, I'll share what my problem was, and I'll be curious as to if you had a similar challenge and how you overcame it, where I felt, like you just said, nobody could outwork me. Mm-hmm. Nobody was more driven than me. And I wouldn't say I'm the smartest person in the room, but I'm the biggest hustler. So my challenge was dealing with people who I just could not get. Like, if I was the guy who went to close that deal, I would have closed it. And then the seller's coming back to me going, oh, I didn't close this because this, and this. So you now had to manage a group of people like that. So How is that transition? Because your goal is now building this empire, and now you've got to kind of adjust because you can't have 100 Rorys out there, right? You have to work with people.
You're so right about that. I went into it with a whole different mindset because I really was researching. Like, this was my intent when I got back into real estate. It was my intent to do this, and so I was watching other companies. I was watching what the other brokers were doing, what the other managers were doing, folks who were owners, how were they involved, and I wanted to be all of them. I wanted to be the managing broker, principal broker, the owner. I wanted to be the whole thing at the top. I didn't want anybody else involved, type of deal. And so I was learning from these folks, and I could see where, this broker over here sold millions of dollars a year in real estate, but then didn't have the most successful agents. Why? Because he's spending most of his time selling, not coaching and training. Then there's this person over here who doesn't even sell and never really did. They got into management with a college degree, not with sales, and they spend all their time teaching and training. And their agents aren't doing that great because they're being taught by somebody who's never been out there in the trenches. So I quickly decided how I was going to be. I was going to coach and teach the way that Hal brought me up. Basically, strength finding, like you said, and that is a great book, by the way. I also have to, second that. Man, I can't remember who wrote it, but wow, what it is a good book. We'll have to look that up, maybe put it in the show notes. But as I went through doing that, I knew that I was going to work on finding everybody's strength and helping all of them become what they had to become. I knew that at the beginning, when we opened our new company, I needed to be selling, but because we had to bring money into the company to keep it going, and I couldn't count on anybody else to do that. So I decided that my sales were going to be what kept the company going and paid the company's expenses and everything else, and then I was going to bring other people in on some of my sales, share some of the commissions, teach them things as I did it, so that when I transitioned out of selling into just ownership, then they would be even stronger. And the company was still getting their money, so it worked out. And that was a very unique way of doing it. I also had a very, very unique pay plan and structure. Most brokers in our area were going with the Tiffany's mentality, where Tiffany's may only sell one lamp today, but they're selling it for $15,000. So they're making all their profit on one sale. Walmart is going to sell 5,000 lamps today, right, across the country, but they're only going to make $1 each. And I said, well, everybody else is doing the boutique route, you know what I mean? So I'm going to do the Walmart route. And so I brought all my realtors in on very high splits, meaning they were making more working for me than anywhere else. And the piece to the company was much smaller than any other company out there. But my people came in and sold a lot more. They were making so much more that they were motivated to go sell a whole lot more. And it really worked for quite a while in that capacity. So I did those things differently, and that kind of got me where I needed to be. And using that framework that I had learned from Hal about playing to everybody's strengths put us in a really good spot, moving forward. If things hadn't happened with, the government and everything else, would have kept working. But the goal at that point was to get as big as possible before I had additional kids. And then when they were small, I still could sink my teeth into it because my wife could be a stay-at-home mom and not have to work because I was making so much money. And so it worked for a while. It really did. It was not a bad plan at that point.
Did you find, thank you for sharing that, did you find that other brokerage houses, forgive me if I'm getting the terminology wrong, but your competitors, all of a sudden they went, what's this guy doing over here? Like, he's making, they all know kind of what everybody's making, right? Did anyone else adapt their strategy to copy yours, or were you just so different that they couldn't do it?
What a great question. If it had been an actual free market, in our area, they would have had to adapt in order to compete. Instead, what they did was we had a unique situation where the MLS was actually owned by 5 of the original people in our county who kind of set things up. So they actually had financial ownership in the MLS, which is not common. But so they made all the decisions. Well, they all banded together and said, hey, this guy's out here that we've known forever, and we all love him. I mean, Rory's been great. He's great to work with. But Rory is no longer Rory. Rory is now an owner and is recruiting all of our agents away from our company, our companies. What are we going to do? And so quite illegally, they banded together and said, we're going to do everything we can to, try and knock this guy out. So it was,
Wow.
it was great for me because, I've always been a maverick. I've always been a rebel. I've always been somebody who goes against the grain and loves every minute of it. And so I relished that role. And it also brought people to my company who loved that. They were so tired of the status quo. They were like, this guy's out there. He doesn't care if everybody hates him. He's just out here doing this, and I can make more money than I can anywhere else. Rory, yeah, I'm coming. Let's go. I had 54 agents working for me before I could blink. And we were off and running. Yeah. So it was neat. They did not conform, though. I mean, to this day, they haven't conformed. They've actually gone the other direction. And that's why so many of them are having a hard time right now.
Wow. So they even know they banded together, and I don't even know what the word, an oligopoly, or again, I don't know what, it doesn't matter. That it's something bad, right? And something illegal.
Antitrust.
But they
is what it's
could,
called, yeah.
antitrust. Okay. So they couldn't stop you from stealing the other agents because I'm sorry, as a seller, I'm going for who pays me the most, as long as I have a good working environment, right? That's what's going to win, right? So, wow, really, really noble of you. So, right. So you're accomplishing all these goals. You've got great strategies, right? Our listeners are picking up like check, check, check. So then the world collapses.
Right. Yes.
The Big
exactly.
Short. The Big Short hits, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
double collapse. So now what happens? Things beyond your control. You've told me before you saw this coming, right?
Yeah.
You knew this was going to happen. Yeah. So what's the pivot now? Like, oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, in short, the crash, 2008, it impacted everybody. I saw it coming. I told everybody it was coming. I knew it was coming. I'm not going to get into all the politics of it and everything else. Everybody knows what happened. Anyway, but the fact of the matter is that I saw it coming and told these people, hey, you're going to do really, really well for a little while because of all these government programs. But that's not additional money. Okay, those are not additional buyers. Okay, for instance, there was a first-time home buyer thing that went out, that the government put out, trying to stimulate the home buyer, first-time home buyer world. And on paper, it looks like a great idea. When you know real estate, you know that that's not creating new first-time home buyers. What it's doing is it's taking all the people who were going to be first-time home buyers over the next year or two, and the reason that they're not buying right now is they don't have the money for a down payment, right? It's making them all buy now instead of over the next year or two. And I recognize that, and I told my people, folks, all this is taking all of these people that you would be servicing over the next year or two and moving them into you right now. So you're going to feel like, the faucet is on full, like the fire hose is just aimed directly at you, and you're going to be killing it, and you're going to be hand over fist with money for a while, and you're going to think, hey, it's raining dollars. Folks, those are the dollars that you would be making at the end of the year too. So take that money and rat hole it, put it away, because when this ends, it's going to be crickets for at least a year. And nobody believed it. Nobody listened. And we had, at that time, I think we had over 60 actual between realtors and associates. And by the end of 2009, we had 12. Because all the rest had to get out of the business, because they spent all their money they made when the stimulus came out, and then didn't save any to budget it. And then we're like, wait a minute, where'd all the buyers go? How come nobody can sell a house? And I'm going, I told you about this. The problem with that, of course, is that when your company is built on the small piece, the Walmart plan, and then everybody goes belly up, well, the company doesn't have anything then. So, looking back, it was a great plan for growth, not a great plan for sustainability if something like that happened. And, then I saw it coming again, and I said, look, I know what's happening. We need to probably close up shop, and my ego got in the way, and I couldn't. So we hung on probably 3 years longer than we should have, and really took the brunt, took the hit hard. So,
right.
And that changed goals again.
Right. So now you're not even, you're following your own advice and you're stockpiling your money that you made because you made, when your people made a lot of money, you made a lot of money, but then you burn through it because you stick with it for too long. Is that pretty accurate?
That's exactly accurate. When they weren't making any money to keep us going, my wife and I made the decision to take that money and try and invest in the business of our personal money to keep it going because we thought we'd come out of this. And then, another election happened and nothing changed, and we knew we were toast at that point because nothing was going to change. And we were like, we're not going to make it through 4 more years. We're just not. So here you go. Time to change gears, change goals, and figure things out again.
Right.
Yeah.
And as you and I have said often to each other, thankfully the windshield is larger than the rearview mirror.
Oh, yes.
Right. So now you're looking behind. Your business has collapsed. Your bank account is slim. So now, what's the next goal? Now we're probably into your 40s. I'm guessing.
Oh yeah, we're in the 40s at this point. Yeah, and
Okay.
The goal at that point goes back to survival again. Things got really bad for a while. Working multiple jobs, doing whatever I had to do to keep food on the table. It was a big crash. Like bigger than people can imagine. And I don't want to waste everybody's time with that, but I've talked about that on my podcast and stuff like that. But we were at rock bottom. And there were a lot of days where, I had to go give blood to get paid to go buy groceries for dinner that night. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know right there. But I said, okay, here's the new goal. I need to get us out of this. I got us into this. I got to get us out of this. This is my family. These are my children. This is my wife. I've made promises to them. I've got to take care of this. And so I said, no matter what I have to do, I don't care how many energy drinks or coffee it's going to take. I don't care how bad it hurts my health. I don't care, what happens to me. I need to find a way to do this. So I found a way to work 2 full-time jobs and also an additional part-time job throwing newspapers for 4 hours in the middle of the night, from 2 a.m. to, 1 a.m. to 5 a.m. And I literally slept about an hour a night. And that was it. And I did that for about 8 months without a break. And it worked. All of that money finally came in. I think I had a few psychotic episodes in there, maybe, from zero sleep. I know my wife was really worried about me in that, but I was also giving blood, regularly, so that we had more money coming in. And we managed to keep my wife at home for most of that, taking care of the kids. We managed to keep the kids in their school, keep them in their sports and their extracurriculars. We sold everything we owned. The goal was survival, and I was going to do whatever I had to do it. And we hit that goal. And that was huge. That was one of the hardest parts of my life, to be honest, as an adult.
Right. So. Right. Both of us did newspapers, I think, in the early part of our life, and then you don't expect to be doing it in your 40s, right?
No,
I don't know if you're riding around on your bike throwing papers, but
no, I was in the car. I at least had a car to take, mailbox to mailbox to put them in, but it's still hell on wheels, but
yeah. Vera, just taking a little veer off the path, but always relevant, because in my preamble I talked about mental health and fitness, and your listeners and your friends, you've told me, and I've seen it, have gotten on your case, right, about not taking care of yourself and just listening to you, right? I can say that. Here's a guy.
And you're right.
Here's a guy working 2 jobs, sleeping 1 hour a night, probably not eating the healthiest, right? You're an great athlete, but that's eventually going to take its toll, right? Yeah. So are you actively knowing that you're sacrificing? Because where I'm going here is, all right, you're this machine, but if you don't take care of the machine, eventually the machine is going to break down. Mm-hmm. So were you aware that you're not, it's like the marble analogy, right? If you got to keep filling up the marble jar to be able to dispense marbles, as they teach kids, and you're not filling up the marble jar. You're just giving and giving and giving. Were you aware of what was happening to you at that point? And I mean, you joked and said you had psychotic episodes, but it's not really that funny, right?
Right. I was very aware. And, my wife and I used the analogy, same type of thing. You burn the candle at both ends. Eventually you run out of wax and you're done. And there were, I think, 2 times in that time frame where I literally just collapsed. God was looking out for me. I fell asleep completely fell asleep, no warning, while I was driving. Went through a stop sign, no, everybody else saw me coming, stopped. I didn't hit anybody. There was no problem. I mean, I just drove into a field and woke up. But that could have been devastating. And, there's another one that was similar, to that sort of a thing. So I did have a couple of little episodes where you go, man, I probably should stop doing this. But we weren't there yet. And, Brian, I just made the decision that I didn't care. I didn't. Prior to that decision, I was ready to hang it up. And I said this on your podcast before. I had made the decision that I was done. I was going to end my life, and it was going to be over. I can say that now very openly because I've dealt with it, a lot. But at that moment, I didn't care. I thought that was the best way to handle things. And then I realized, how cowardly that was and what that would do to my family. And there's a whole episode that goes along with that. But let's just, for today, that's just something that happened. So when I came out of that and said, look, I can't do that. I've got to take care of my family. This is my job. I made the decision that I didn't care what happened to me as long as it happened while I was doing everything in my power to fix this. And I meant it, you buy, the rest of the family would be eating, chicken and rice and stuff that I'd be able to pick up, and I'd be having, ramen noodles, and that's all I would eat, for the whole day or something. And, you stop at a gas station and you get like nuts for 99 cents and you go, well, okay, here it is. That's all I'm having now. And you move on. And it's where you are. It's what you have to do. And I think the most I ever spent on myself was maybe $250 for those little 5-hour energy guys they used to have, or that they might still have.
Oh boy, yeah,
and
they do.
I'd pound some of those. I did. I knew exactly what I was doing, and I did it willingly and consciously, and I just didn't care, because if I didn't succeed at this section of my life, if I didn't succeed in this goal of bringing us back, then nothing I had done prior to that mattered anymore. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the biggest switches, I think, when you look at how goals change, across your timeline. You go from, making, more than $500,000 a year, to nothing, to giving blood to pay for food. And you just say, look, I don't care. If I don't succeed at this, then nothing else matters. And so, hey, I'm sure I shortened my life by doing that, but it's not over yet, brother. And,
nope.
I'm doing a lot better now.
Yeah. So that's a great transition into our home stretch, and there's so many nuggets in here. Yeah. And, you've also taught me a lot about, keeping things on track, and it's actually worked out. We didn't even talk about this, to do it by decade. So now you get everybody out of the hole. You get yourself out of the hole, and now you head into your 50s. So now you're past, right, this kind of disastrous period, and
Yeah.
you get through it, and you're alive, and you have two amazing sons. One who has the most amazing quads I've ever seen in my life, and I told you about that yesterday. If he's listening, God bless you.
Yeah.
I know you love the movie Rocky, as do I. So now we're getting to the final fight, right? But we still got another half of our lives to live. But bring us home into your 50s, into current day. So what then becomes the latest goal, and how are you getting there?
Yeah, no, I appreciate all that. I had, if you kind of skip the whole COVID era, you know what I mean? There was I did some steady, solid jobs there, making good money, working less hours to kind of just continue to build us up. But it was hard physical labor, and it kind of led me to, a lot of the problems I've had in the last couple of years, but physically speaking. But the last few years especially, things have changed a ton. My kids are all grown. My kids have, openly said to me, "Dad, look, we don't blame you for any of this stuff. You got to stop beating yourself up all the time for what we went through." We had a tight family, man, and they were there, just there, like cheering for us, all of us. They weren't angry about what happened. They weren't like, "Oh man, I can't believe I don't have this or I don't have that." They were on board, and it was a team effort, and they knew what I was doing to try and get us out of it, and they respected it, and they kind of wanted to help it. So they're now grown. We've had awesome conversations, to where my youngest son actually says, "Hey, Dad, you did it. You won." Because my goal was to make sure that they graduated and had as many options as they could in front of them. And my youngest is like, "Dad, I'm going to start my own business right now. Okay, you gave me everything I needed. It's up to me now." Sorry. "You won." He said, "Now I'm going to go do it myself." And I've had similar conversations with my older one, and anyway, you have those, and you realize that life has now changed completely, and they don't need you anymore as their provider. I have 3 wonderful kids that are all out in the world doing fantastic and tearing it up. And so now, it takes a little while to realize it, but now my focus is, a new life with my wife. It's she and I. And we get to decide now who we want to be and what we want to be. And that's all we have to worry about. And so we've been on a mission for a couple of years now of we're going to do what we love. And we're not going to worry about, do we have enough for a big house or for a new car or anything else. We're going to do what we love. And somehow it's going to work out. And it is, we just downsized on purpose because we're like, why are we paying for 3 bedrooms and a full basement when all our kids are gone? And now we have a nice little place that's perfect for us, and it costs like $3,500 a month less. It's beautiful, But my goal now is, it's not survival, because I know that's going to take care of itself. It's not, trying to make as much as possible. It's being fulfilled. It's happiness. To not sound too trite. It's fulfilling my purpose now, and helping my wife do the same. And so it's it's a beautiful time for us right now, because we finally get to do this. And the road here, man, was not easy, but we feel like we earned our way here. And so we really do get to relish it and enjoy it. And we don't have to feel bad about it, because like I said, we earned it with all the fighting to get here today. And so we get to watch our 3 kids be absolutely fantastic, and one just got married, and the other 2 are getting married in October of this coming year. They're all building their own families and building their own lives, and They still need us. My youngest son said, "Dad, you used to be my coach. In addition to my dad, now you're my like life coach, and I just need like your opinion and guidance on some things, but I don't need you as my provider and my caretaker. I got this." And my youngest one's pretty tough. So he said a lot of other stuff I won't say on your podcast, but it's a whole new life now and a whole new goal. So when you look back at all the goals I had before and how I ran my life and how I aimed my life, when you put it into the individual decades like you just decided to do, which was a great idea. So thanks for running things that way. It was real easy for me to talk about it. It's amazing how your goals change. And you have to go with it. You got to go with that flow, and you got to let these things change, and you got to adapt and overcome.
Yeah, that is, it's so well said. It's so heartwarming. You've earned everything that you have, a lot more than most people that I know. Kind of given nothing. It's a very Rocky-esque story, if you will. Someday, if you ever come to Philly, you and I will have to run up the art museum steps and do the Rocky thing, because you deserve it. And I'm so happy for you, because now, I've told you before, we both deserve to live to 100. Everybody does, and so we're really on the second back nine. Neither of us are golfers, but if we were, right, that's what we're doing, and it is a whole new set of goals. So I loved so many tips and that go through there. So if we're to compress, as I like to do with every show, with owning the goal, that there's so many tips and information, and I know I learned so much in this episode, and I'm so thankful and grateful for you being here and sharing that. And I know our listeners are going to be the same. And if you had to, because you're so succinct, if you had to drill it down to sort of one thread to leave our listeners with, where if nothing else, even one person can just walk away and go, yeah, Rory said, this makes sense for me, what would that be?
Wow, could go a lot of different ways with that. I think the prevailing thread for me has always been, the people who depend on you, the folks who you bring into the world. Okay, I mean, they're here because you decided to bring them into the world. Okay, people like your wife, because she decided to marry you because she trusts you, because she believes in you. So the people who depend on you have to be more important to you than you are to you. And I've said that a million times, and it gets distorted. People are like, oh, well, I got to take care of myself. I'm not saying don't take care of yourself. What I am saying is, if there's 4 people at the table and there's 3 pieces of chicken, then you know what? You're the one that doesn't eat, because it was your job to provide it. And I've lived by those type of words my whole life. And if I didn't really believe in those types of sentiments, I never would have made it through that period of time where I had to just say, I don't care what happens, because this is my job. Yeah. This is my purpose. Yeah. So I think that's the biggest thing, is to realize that sometimes there's things bigger than yourself and your own enjoyment and your own, even self-care. You've got to do what you got to do in life, no matter what it is. So buck up and do it.
Buck up and do it.
That's about it.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That may be the title of the episode. Buck up and do it. I actually think that's kind of a. I think that's kind of a good one, and it says it all. Well, Rory, this is every conversation with you is literally like a master class. I'm being truthful, from the heart, and I'm learned so much, and I know listeners learn so much, and all your listeners on your podcast. I know the listeners on my podcast will be as benefited in their lives, just listening to this episode. So for which I am truly grateful, by the mechanism that is this podcast. I know they'll be truly grateful, and I'll get some wonderful feedback and thanks to you especially. So thank you so much for spending your time on a busy weekend afternoon. And I really, truly appreciate all the wisdom that you imparted. And then, just remind our folks where they can find you to get some more of the wonderful wisdom from Rory Paquette.
Thanks for that, Brian. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on this podcast that you're building. And I do want to say I love what you're building and the way you're building it. I think you're doing a great job. This is going to be a really cool thing moving forward for you and for a lot of people. So I'm honored to be on it at this juncture, especially, at the beginning when you're putting it together. I'm easy to reach. It's my name will be in the show notes or on the title someplace, Rory Paquette. Look me up anywhere. You can Google me. You'll find 50 different places for me. But I'm on Facebook, Rory Paquette. I'm on Instagram, Rory Paquette. I'm on X, Rory Paquette. Anywhere you want to find me, I'm there. And so contact me anytime. Check out the podcasts. If you're a podcaster out there like Brian and you want to be on the Podcaster Nation, hey, let us know. Come on, contact me. We'll get you on the show. So
fantastic. Yeah. Well, I would encourage that for sure, because I know it's been life-changing for me. So I can speak as your testimonial to that happening in just a brief, probably 2 months that I've known you. So I'm an endorser of coming across your purview and your energy, and I'm just so thankful. So thank you so much. Thank you to our listeners so much of Owning the Goal, because it is our mission to share the thoughts, tips, ideas, insights, and wisdom that our guests bring on to the show, that I am able to share to try and really just help people and help everyone be the best person they can be, because I think we all need and want great teachers to do that. So with that being said, I appreciate you listening and tuning in, and look forward to our next episode. And you can batch listen to them for just a big, healthy dose of insights, wisdom, and information. And that being said, thank you so much again, Rory, and we'll look forward to seeing you in future episodes.
Thanks again.